This is the story of a daughter who gave up everything for her father, only to be humiliated at his funeral by the very siblings who abandoned him. Picture this. For 15 long years, this daughter sacrificed her career, her marriage, her entire life to care for her dying father. But at the will reading, her siblings laughed when the lawyer said she would receive nothing. They mocked her. They called her a fool. However, when the lawyer handed her a sealed envelope marked private, everything changed. What was inside that envelope? Well, before we dig deep into this story, I always ask you to keep supporting this channel. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit the like button. And so you don't miss any of our most exciting and recent narratives, subscribe and activate the notification bell. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please write your name and city in the comments below. Thank you all so much. Back to the story. That afternoon, rain hammered against the windows of the law office on the third floor of a gray building in downtown Portland, Oregon. The sound was relentless, like the universe itself was weeping. Inside the cramped conference room, 5 people sat around a mahogany table that had seen better days. The air was thick with tension, old resentments, and the musty smell of legal documents. Maya Torres sat at the far end of the table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She wore a simple black dress, the same one she had worn to her father's funeral 3 days earlier. Her eyes were puffy and red, not just from crying, but from exhaustion. 15 years of exhaustion, 15 years of sleepless nights, of changing bedpans, of holding her father's hand through chemotherapy sessions, of watching the strongest man she had ever known waste away to nothing. Across from her sat her older brother, Camden, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya had spent on clothes in the last 5 years. His wife, Sienna, sat beside him, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the table. Next to them was Maya's older sister, Delaney, who had flown in from Miami just yesterday. Delaney wore designer sunglasses indoors, as if the fluorescent lights were somehow too bright for her privileged eyes. Her husband hadn't bothered to come at all. At the head of the table sat the lawyer, a tired-looking man in his 60s named Gerald Hutchins. He had been her father's attorney for over 30 years. He knew the family well, too well. Gerald cleared his throat and adjusted his reading glasses. He opened a leather folder and pulled out a stack of papers. "The will of Robert James Torres," he began, his voice steady but somber, "dated March 15th of this year. Before we proceed, I want to remind everyone that this is a legally binding document, witnessed and notarized according to state law." Camden leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smug smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Let's get this over with, Gerald. We all know how this goes. Dad had the house, the cabin up in Mount Hood, his retirement accounts. Split it 3 ways, sign the papers, and we can all get on with our lives." Maya felt a sharp pain in her chest. Get on with our lives. As if their father's death was just an inconvenient interruption in Camden's busy schedule of golf tournaments and business deals. As if the last 15 years had been nothing. Gerald looked at Camden over his glasses. "Mr. Torres, I would appreciate it if you would allow me to read the will without interruption." Sienna snickered. She leaned toward Delaney and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "This is going to take forever. I told Camden we should have just done this over Zoom." Delaney smiled. "I know, right? I have a spa appointment at 4. Can we speed this up?" Maya said nothing. She had learned long ago that speaking up in the presence of her siblings was useless. They had always been this way, self-centered, cruel, dismissive. Even as children, Camden and Delaney had formed an alliance against her, the youngest, the unwanted afterthought. Their mother had died giving birth to Maya, and though no one ever said it out loud, Maya had always felt the blame. Her father had never blamed her, though. Never. He had loved her fiercely, completely. And when the cancer came, when the doctor said he had maybe 2 years left, it was Maya who had dropped everything. She had quit her job as a teacher. She had moved back into her childhood home. She had given up her own apartment, her independence, her relationship with a man who might have been the love of her life. She had done it all without hesitation because her father needed her, and because she loved him more than anything in this world. Camden and Delaney had made excuses. Camden had his company to run. Delaney had her social obligations in Miami. They visited twice a year, maybe. They sent flowers. They made phone calls that lasted 5 minutes. And when their father finally passed away in his sleep, holding Maya's hand, they had swooped in like vultures, suddenly concerned about the estate, about the assets, about what they were owed. Gerald began to read. I, Robert James Torres, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. To my son, Camden Robert Torres, I leave my collection of vintage watches, appraised at approximately $35,000, and my shares in Torres Industries, valued at approximately $200,000. Camden grinned. He nudged Sienna. See, I told you the old man would come through. Gerald continued. To my daughter, Delaney Marie Torres, I leave my property in Mount Hood, Oregon, including the cabin and surrounding 10 acres of land, appraised at approximately $400,000, as well as my investment portfolio with Cascade Financial, valued at approximately $300,000. Delaney clapped her hands together. Oh my God, the cabin. I can finally sell that place. It's been rotting up there for years. Maya's heart sank deeper with every word. She had spent countless weekends at that cabin with her father. They had fished in the creek. They had sat on the porch and watched the sunset. It was sacred ground, and Delaney wanted to sell it. Gerald paused. He looked at Maya, and for a brief moment his expression softened. Maya thought she saw pity in his eyes. To my youngest daughter, Maya Rose Torres. Gerald read slowly. Maya sat up straighter. Her hands were trembling. I leave nothing. The room fell silent. For exactly 3 seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. Then Camden started laughing. It was a loud, cruel, barking laugh that echoed off the walls. Sienna joined in, her laughter high-pitched and mocking. Delaney removed her sunglasses, her mouth hanging open in shock, before she too began to laugh. Nothing, Camden gasped between fits of laughter. He left you nothing. Oh my God, that's perfect. Delaney wiped tears from her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of amusement. All those years, Maya, all those years you wasted playing nurse, and he left you nothing. You poor thing. Sienna leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I mean, I hate to say it, but maybe he didn't think you deserved anything. You never really accomplished much, did you? No career, no husband, no kids. Just a sad little life, taking care of an old man. Maya felt like she had been punched in the stomach. The room was spinning. Her father had left her nothing. After everything. After sacrificing her entire adult life. After giving up everything. Nothing. Camden stood up, still chuckling. Well, this has been enlightening. Gerald, send us the paperwork. We'll get everything sorted out and be out of your hair. Maya, I'd say I'm sorry, but honestly, what did you expect? You should have built your own life instead of leeching off Dad. Maya's vision blurred with tears. She wanted to scream. She wanted to lunge across the table and claw at their smug faces, but she couldn't move. She was frozen, destroyed, betrayed by the one person she thought would never hurt her. Gerald raised his hand. Please sit down, Mr. Torres. I'm not finished. Camden rolled his eyes but sat back down. What else is there? The old man's stamp collection? Gerald reached into the folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. It was cream-colored, thick, and expensive-looking. On the front, in her father's shaky handwriting, were the words, For Maya, Rose Torres, private, to be opened only by her. Gerald slid the envelope across the table. Maya stared at it as if it might explode. What is this? She whispered. Gerald's expression remained neutral, but there was something in his eyes, something that looked almost like satisfaction. Your father left specific instructions. This envelope is for you and you alone. Its contents are not part of the public record of this will. He requested that I give it to you after the reading. Camden frowned. What the hell is that supposed to mean? What's in the envelope? That's none of your concern, Mr. Torres, Gerald said firmly. The contents are private. Delaney stood up, her voice sharp. That's not fair. If it's part of the estate, we have a right to know. It's not part of the estate, Gerald replied. It's a personal letter, and possibly more, but as I said, it's private. Maya's hands shook as she picked up the envelope. It was heavy, heavier than a letter should be. She looked at Gerald, her eyes pleading for answers. He simply nodded. "Open it when you're ready, Miss Torres, preferably in private." Camden slammed his hand on the table. "This is bullshit. If there's money or property or anything of value in that envelope, we're entitled to it. We're his children, too." Gerald stood, gathering his papers. "The will has been read. The bequests are clear. If you wish to contest it, you're welcome to hire your own attorney, but I assure you, Mr. Torres left this will ironclad. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other appointments." He looked at Maya one last time. "Miss Torres, my office is available to you if you need a private space." Maya nodded numbly. She clutched the envelope to her chest, as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. Camden, Sienna, and Delaney stood up, muttering angrily among themselves. As they walked toward the door, Delaney turned back and sneered. "Enjoy your little letter, Maya. I'm sure it's just Dad telling you what a disappointment you were." They left, slamming the door behind them. The rain continued to hammer against the windows. Maya sat alone at the table, staring at the envelope. Her father's handwriting blurred through her tears. She didn't understand. Why would he leave her nothing in the will but give her this secret envelope? What was inside? And why did it have to be private? Gerald returned to the room quietly. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your father was a wise man, Miss Torres. He knew exactly what he was doing. Take your time. Read it when you're ready. And when you do, call me. We'll have much to discuss." With that, he left her alone. Maya sat in the dim conference room, the envelope heavy in her lap, and let herself cry. She cried for her father. She cried for the years she had lost. She cried for the cruelty of her siblings. And she cried because she didn't know if she had the strength to open the envelope and face whatever truth lay inside. Maya didn't open the envelope that day. She couldn't. The humiliation, the shock, the grief, it was all too much. She left the law office and walked through the rain without an umbrella, letting the cold water soak through her dress, her hair, her skin. She wanted to feel something other than the hollow ache in her chest. She walked for hours through the streets of Portland, past cafes and bookstores, and people living their normal lives. People who hadn't just been told they were worth nothing. People who hadn't spent 15 years sacrificing everything only to be laughed at by their own family. By the time she reached the small studio apartment she had rented after her father's death, it was dark. The apartment was barely furnished, a futon on the floor, a small table, a lamp. She hadn't had the energy or money to buy anything more. She had spent every cent she had on her father's medical bills, on his comfort, on making sure his last years were filled with dignity and love. She set the envelope on the table and stared at it. Her father's handwriting seemed to glow in the dim light. For Maya Rose Torres, private, what could possibly be inside? An apology? An explanation? A final goodbye? She was almost afraid to find out. That night she lay on the futon and stared at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Her mind replayed the scene in the law office over and over. Camden's laughter, Delaney's sneer, Sienna's cruel words. "You never really accomplished much, did you?" Maybe they were right. Maybe she had wasted her life. She had given up her teaching job, a job she had loved. She had let go of a relationship with a kind, gentle man who had wanted to marry her. She had lost friends because she never had time to see them. She had become invisible, a ghost haunting her father's house, existing only to serve. And for what? For nothing. Her father had left her nothing. The next morning, Maya woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. It was a text from Camden. "We need to talk about the house. Dad's house. Delaney and I agree it should be sold. You have 2 weeks to clear out your stuff." Maya stared at the message. The house. Her childhood home. The place where her father had taken his last breath. They were going to sell it. Of course they were. She typed back with trembling fingers. "I'm still living here. I need more time." Camden's reply came instantly. "Not our problem. You should have thought about that before you decided to play martyr. 2 weeks, then we're bringing in the real estate agent." Maya threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. She sat up, her hands in her hair, pulling at the roots. This couldn't be happening. She had nowhere to go. No money, no job, no future. She looked at the envelope on the table. It sat there, silent and accusing. Fine, she whispered to herself. Fine. Let's see what he had to say. She walked over, picked up the envelope, and tore it open. Inside were three items: a handwritten letter on her father's personal stationery, a small brass key, and a business card for a law firm she didn't recognize. The letter was written in her father's shaky handwriting, the letters uneven, but unmistakably his. My dearest Maya, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I'm gone, and you have just endured what I can only imagine was a painful and humiliating will reading. For that, I am deeply sorry, but I need you to trust me, my sweet girl. Everything I have done to protect you. Maya's hands shook as she continued reading. Your brother and sister are not bad people, but they are weak. They are greedy. They have always been so, even as children. I loved them as any father loves his children, but I was not blind to their faults. I knew that if I left you anything of value in the public will, they would fight you for it. They would drag you through court. They would make your life a living hell. And you, my gentle, kind-hearted daughter, would suffer even more than you already have. So I made a choice. I let them think they had won. I let them believe they inherited everything. But the truth, Maya, is that they inherited only a fraction of what I have built. The real inheritance, the one that matters, is yours, and yours alone. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She read the words again. The real inheritance is yours. Her father's letter continued. 15 years ago, when the doctors told me I had cancer, I knew my time was limited. I also knew that you would be the one to care for me. Not because you had to, but because of who you are. You have your mother's heart, Maya. Selfless, loyal, full of love. And I wanted to make sure that your sacrifice would not be in vain, so I began to plan. Over the past 15 years, while you cared for me, I quietly moved the majority of my assets into a private trust. The house Camden and Delaney are so eager to sell, it's mortgaged to the hilt. The cabin Delaney thinks is worth $500,000. It needs $200,000 in repairs and back taxes. The investment portfolio? It's mostly bonds that won't mature for another decade. The watches, replicas. I sold the real ones years ago. I gave them just enough to keep them satisfied, but not enough to matter. The real estate, the real money, the real legacy, I placed into an irrevocable trust, managed by the law firm whose card you now hold. The trust is worth approximately $3.7 million, and it is entirely yours, Maya. Yours alone. Maya dropped the letter. Her hands were shaking so violently she couldn't hold it. $3.7 million. She read the words again and again. It couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake. She picked up the letter and kept reading. The key you hold opens a safety deposit box at Portland First National Bank. Inside, you will find the documentation for the trust, as well as some personal items I wanted you to have. Your mother's jewelry, her wedding ring, photographs, letters, things I could never give to Camden or Delaney because they would have sold them without a second thought. Maya, I know you are hurting right now. I know you feel betrayed. But please understand, I did this because I love you more than words can express. You gave me 15 years of your life. You gave me comfort, dignity, love. You were there when I was afraid. You held my hand when I couldn't breathe. You sang to me when the pain was too much. You are the only one who truly loved me, not for what I could give you, but for who I was. And for that, I am giving you everything. Use this money wisely, my darling girl. Build the life you deserve. Travel, fall in love. Buy a house by the ocean. Go back to teaching. Do whatever brings you joy. And when you think of me, don't think of the sick old man in the hospital bed. Think of the father who loved you more than life itself. The father who is so proud of the woman you have become. I love you, Maya, forever and always. Your father, Robert James Torres. Maya collapsed onto the floor, the letter clutched to her chest. She sobbed, deep, wrenching sobs that tore through her entire body. But these weren't tears of grief. They were tears of relief, of validation, of overwhelming, crushing love. Her father hadn't betrayed her. He had protected her. He had seen her, he had valued her, and he had made sure that her sacrifice, her love, her years of devotion would be rewarded. She lay there on the floor for a long time, crying and laughing and whispering thank you over and over again. When she finally pulled herself together, she picked up the business card. The law firm was called Brighton and Associates. The address was downtown, not far from Gerald's office. She looked at the small brass key, Portland First National Bank. She grabbed her phone, the screen cracked from where she had thrown it earlier, and called the number on the card. A pleasant voice answered, "Brighton and Associates, how may I help you?" "My name is Maya Torres," she said, her voice hoarse. "My father, Robert Torres, left me a letter. He said I should contact you." There was a brief pause. Then the voice became warmer. "Miss Torres, we've been expecting your call. Can you come to our office today? We have much to discuss." Maya looked around her tiny, empty apartment. She thought about Camden and Delaney, so smug, so certain they had won. She thought about the house they wanted to sell, the life they wanted to erase, and she smiled. A cold, determined smile. "Yes," she said, "I can be there in an hour." The offices of Brighton and Associates were nothing like Gerald's cramped, outdated space. This was a sleek, modern firm located on the 20th floor of a glass tower overlooking the Willamette River. The receptionist greeted Maya warmly and escorted her to a spacious conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows. A woman in her 40s, dressed in a sharp navy suit, stood to greet her. "Miss Torres, I'm Caroline Brighton. I've been managing your father's trust for the past 10 years. Please sit." Maya sat, feeling out of place in her worn jeans and sweater. She hadn't had time to change. She hadn't even brushed her hair. But Caroline didn't seem to notice or care. She opened a leather portfolio and slid a stack of documents across the table. "Your father was a remarkable man," Caroline began. "He came to me 15 years ago with a very specific request. He wanted to ensure that the daughter who cared for him would be taken care of in return. He knew his other children well, perhaps better than they knew themselves, and he wanted to protect you from them." Maya nodded, still trying to process everything. The letter said, "The trust is worth $3.7 million. Is that true?" Caroline smiled. "That was the value 2 years ago. With careful investments and the sale of several properties your father owned under corporate entities your siblings knew nothing about. The current value is approximately $4.1 million. Maya felt dizzy. 4.1 million. It was an impossible number, life-changing, life-altering, completely surreal. Caroline continued, "The trust is structured so that you receive full control at age 35, which I believe is next month, correct?" Maya nodded. "Yes, until then, I act as trustee, but I can release funds for reasonable expenses, education, housing, medical care, and so forth. Your father wanted to make sure you were provided for immediately." Maya's mind was racing. "What about my brother and sister? Will they find out?" Caroline's expression hardened. "Not unless you tell them. The trust is completely separate from your father's estate. It was funded years ago, and all assets were transferred into the trust's name. As far as the public record is concerned, your father's estate consists of only what was listed in the will. The house, the cabin, the portfolio, the watches, all of it is legally theirs. They have no claim to the trust." "What about the house?" Maya asked. "My brother says I have 2 weeks to move out." Caroline's smile turned sharp. "Let me handle that. Technically, your father still owed a significant mortgage on that property. The bank holds the note, and as it happens, one of our subsidiary firms purchased that note 6 months ago. If your brother wants to sell, he'll need to pay off the mortgage first. And I don't think he has the liquidity to do that." Maya felt a flicker of satisfaction. "So they can't just kick me out?" "Not without our approval, and I don't intend to give it. You're welcome to stay in that house as long as you like, rent-free, until you decide what you want to do. Or, if you prefer, we can arrange for you to purchase a new property immediately. The trust can cover it." Maya's head was spinning. This was too much, too fast. She had gone from having nothing to having everything in the span of 24 hours. Caroline seemed to sense her overwhelm. She reached across the table and placed a hand on Maya's. I know this is a lot to take in, but your father spent years planning this. He wanted you to be free, free from your siblings, free from financial worry, free to live the life you sacrificed for him. Take your time. There's no rush. Maya wiped at her eyes. She hadn't realized she was crying again. What do I do now? Caroline leaned back in her chair. That's entirely up to you. But if I may make a suggestion? Maya nodded. Don't tell your brother and sister, not yet. Let them think they won. Let them believe they got everything. And when the time is right, when they inevitably come crawling to you for money because they've overspent or made poor decisions, that's when you reveal the truth. Or don't. You owe them nothing. Maya thought about that. The idea of keeping this secret, of watching Camden and Delaney gloat and preen while knowing the truth, it was almost delicious. But there was also a part of her that just wanted to be done with them, to walk away and never look back. I don't know, Maya admitted. I just feel so angry, so hurt. You have every right to be, Caroline said gently, but don't let that anger consume you. Your father didn't give you this gift so you could spend your life seeking revenge. He gave it to you so you could be happy. Maya nodded slowly. She knew Caroline was right, but it was hard, so hard. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya stayed in her father's house. She ignored Camden's increasingly angry texts. She didn't answer Delaney's phone calls. She simply existed in the space her father had loved, surrounded by his books, his photographs, his memories. She went to the bank and opened the safety deposit box. Inside, just as her father had promised, was her mother's jewelry, a simple gold wedding band, a string of pearls, a locket with a photo of Maya as a baby. There were letters, too. Letters her father had written to her mother during their courtship. Letters filled with love and hope and dreams for the future. Maya read every one, crying and smiling and feeling closer to both her parents than she had in years. She also found the trust documents, page after page of legal language that confirmed everything Caroline had told her. $4.1 million, all hers. She could barely comprehend it. One evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset, her phone rang. It was Camden. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. What do you want, Camden? His voice was tight with frustration. We need to talk, in person, about the house. Maya sighed. I told you I need more time. It's been 2 weeks, Maya. We've been patient. But Delaney and I have buyers interested. We can't wait forever. Maya felt a surge of anger. Patient? You think 2 weeks is patient? I lived here for 15 years taking care of Dad while you were off living your life. And now you can't wait 2 weeks? There was a pause. Then Camden's voice turned cold. Look, I get that you're upset about the will. But that's not our fault. Dad made his choice. Maybe if you had been more than just a caretaker, if you had actually contributed something to the family business or built a life for yourself, he would have left you something. But you didn't. So now you need to move on. Maya's hands clenched around the phone. She wanted to scream at him. She wanted to tell him everything. But Caroline's words echoed in her mind. Let them think they won. Fine, Maya said quietly. I'll be out by the end of the week. Really? Camden sounded surprised. Yeah, really, I'm done. Fighting. There was a pause. Then Camden's voice softened, just slightly. Look, Maya, I know this has been hard, but it's for the best. You need to build your own life now. Maybe go back to teaching. Find a nice guy. Settle down. You're still young. You can start over. Maya closed her eyes. The condescension in his voice was unbearable. Sure, Camden. I'll do that. Good. I'll let Delaney know. We'll have the real estate agent come by next week. And Maya? He paused. I'm sorry. About Dad. I know you two were close. Maya didn't respond. She just hung up. That night she called Carolyn. I want to buy a house, Maya said. Something beautiful, somewhere far from here. Caroline's voice was warm. I'll start looking immediately. What's your budget? Maya thought about the number. $4.1 million. For the first time in her life, money wasn't an issue. I don't know, Maya admitted. What can I afford? Caroline laughed softly. Miss Torres, you can afford just about anything you want. 3 months later, Maya stood on the deck of her new home, a stunning craftsman style house perched on a cliff overlooking Cannon Beach, 2 hours from Portland. The ocean stretched out before her, endless and blue, the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below, a constant, soothing rhythm. The house was everything she had ever dreamed of. 3 bedrooms, floor to ceiling windows, a cozy fireplace, a kitchen with marble countertops and top of the line appliances. There was a small garden where she planned to grow vegetables and flowers, a reading nook filled with books, a studio where she could paint, something she had loved as a child but had abandoned years ago. It had cost her $800,000. Caroline had handled all the paperwork. Maya had moved in 2 weeks ago, and every morning she woke up and couldn't quite believe it was real. She had also done something else, something that felt equally surreal. She had gone back to school, not as a student, but as a teacher. A small private academy in the nearby town had been looking for an experienced educator, and Maya had applied. They hired her immediately. She would start teaching in the fall, literature and creative writing, her favorite subjects. For the first time in 15 years, Maya had a future, a real future, one that belonged to her. She hadn't spoken to Camden or Delaney since the day she moved out of her father's house. She had left it spotless, every room cleaned, every item of her father's carefully packed into boxes and stored in a climate-controlled unit. She had taken only what was hers, her clothes, her books, the contents of the safety deposit box. Camden had texted her once, "Thanks for leaving the place clean." The house sold fast. "We got a good price." Maya hadn't responded. She had blocked both their numbers after that. She didn't need them in her life. She didn't want them in her life. But today, as she stood on the deck, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of her. "Hello, Miss Torres." It was a man's voice, professional, polite. "This is Richard Calloway from Cascade Financial. I'm calling on behalf of Delaney Torres." Maya frowned. Cascade Financial. That was the investment firm her father had left to Delaney in the will. What about her? "Well, there's been a bit of a complication. Mrs. Torres attempted to liquidate the portfolio, but it seems the majority of the bonds won't mature for another 8 years. She was under the impression the portfolio was worth $300,000 in liquid assets, but the current cash value is only about $40,000. She's quite upset and insists there's been some kind of mistake." Maya felt a smile tug at the corners of her mouth. "Is there a mistake?" "No, ma'am. Everything is in order. The portfolio is exactly as your father structured it. I'm calling because Mrs. Torres demanded I contact you. She seems to believe you might have information about other assets." Maya's smile widened. "I'm afraid I can't help you. My father left me nothing, remember?" There was a pause. Then the man cleared his throat. "I see. Well, thank you for your time, Miss Torres." He hung up. Maya stood there, staring at her phone, and then she started laughing. It was a deep, genuine laugh that echoed across the deck and out over the ocean. Her father had planned this so perfectly. He had given Camden and Delaney just enough to make them think they were rich, but not enough to actually matter, and now they were realizing the truth. A week later, another call came. This time, it was from a number she recognized, Camden. She let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times that day. Finally, he left a message. "Maya, it's Camden. Look, we need to talk. Seriously, there's been some issues with the estate. The house sale fell through because of some mortgage complications. Delaney's portfolio is basically worthless, and the cabin needs a ton of repairs. We're both kind of strapped for cash right now. I know we didn't leave things on great terms, but you're still family. If you could loan us some money just to get through this rough patch, we'd really appreciate it. Call me back." Maya deleted the message. 2 weeks after that, Delaney showed up at her house. Maya had no idea how she found the address. She opened the door to find her sister standing there, looking significantly less polished than she had at the will reading. Her designer clothes were wrinkled. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. There were dark circles under her eyes. "Maya," Delaney said, her voice tight. "We need to talk." Maya crossed her arms. "How did you find me?" Delaney waved a hand dismissively. I hired a private investigator. It wasn't hard. She looked past Maya into the house, and her eyes widened. This is your place? How did you afford this? Maya stepped outside and closed the door behind her. What do you want, Delaney? Delaney's expression shifted. She tried to look sympathetic, but it came off as desperate. Look, I know things have been hard between us, and I'm sorry for how we treated you at the will reading. That was wrong. But we're family, Maya, and family helps each other. Maya said nothing. Delaney continued, Camden and I are in a tough spot. The estate wasn't what we thought it was. We both have debts, obligations. I'm about to lose my condo in Miami. Camden's business is struggling. We need help. And I know Dad didn't leave you anything, but you were always good at managing money. Maybe you could co-sign a loan for us, or Maya held up a hand. Stop. Delaney blinked. What? You came here to ask me for money. After everything you said to me. After you laughed at me. After you called me a fool and a failure and told me I wasted my life. Delaney's face flushed. I said, I'm sorry, I know I was harsh, but I'm desperate, Maya. I need your help. Maya felt a cold calm wash over her. This was the moment she could tell Delaney everything, the moment she could watch her sister's face crumble as she realized the truth. But as she stood there looking at Delaney's desperate, exhausted expression, Maya realized something. She didn't want revenge. She didn't want to gloat. She just wanted peace. No, Maya said simply. No, Delaney's voice rose. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not going to help you, Delaney. You and Camden made your choices. You treated me like garbage. You mocked me for caring about our father. You took everything and left me with nothing, or so you thought. And now you want my help? No. Delaney's face twisted with anger. You selfish bitch. You always acted so high and mighty, so selfless, but you're just as petty and vindictive as the rest of us. Maya smiled. Maybe I am. Or maybe I just learned that I don't owe you anything. Get off my property, Delaney, and don't come back. Delaney stared at her for a long moment, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then she turned and stormed down the driveway to her rental car. She sped off, kicking up gravel. Maya watched her go. And then she went back inside her beautiful home, closed the door, and let out a long, steady breath. A few days later, Caroline called. I heard your sister paid you a visit, Caroline said. Maya sat down on her couch, looking out at the ocean. How did you know? Your neighbors mentioned it. Small town gossip. She laughed. Are you okay? I'm fine, Maya said. She asked for money. I said no. Good, Caroline said firmly. You don't owe them anything. I know. There was a pause. Then Caroline's voice softened. Your father would be proud of you, Maya. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. I hope so. I know so. Maya smiled. Thank you, Caroline, for everything. It's my job, and my pleasure. If you need anything, anything at all, you call me. I will. After they hung up, Maya sat in the silence of her home. The waves crashed outside. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about her father, about his hands, rough and worn, holding hers in the hospital, about his voice telling her stories from his childhood, about his smile, the one that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He had loved her, truly, deeply, unconditionally, and he had made sure she would be okay. She picked up the photograph she kept on the mantel. It was from her college graduation. Her father stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, both of them grinning at the camera. I miss you, Dad, she whispered. But I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. 6 months passed. Maya settled into her new life with a sense of peace she had never known. She taught at the academy, and her students adored her. She made friends with her neighbors, joining a local book club and volunteering at the animal shelter. She started painting again, filling canvases with the ocean, the cliffs, the endless sky. She even started dating a kind, quiet man named Elliot who owned a bookstore in town. They took long walks on the beach. They cooked dinner together. They laughed. It was simple and uncomplicated and exactly what Maya needed. She thought about Camden and Delaney less and less. They had become distant memories, ghosts of a painful past she no longer had to carry. But one day, as she was grading papers in her favorite cafe, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Maya, it's Camden. Please don't block this number. I need to talk to you. It's important. Maya stared at the message. She should delete it. Block the number. Move on. But something made her respond. What do you want? The reply came almost immediately. Can we meet in person? I promise I won't ask you for money. I just need to talk. Please. Maya hesitated. Then she typed back, Fine, tomorrow. 2 p.m. The cafe on Main Street in Cannon Beach. If you bring Delaney, I'm leaving. Just me, I swear. The next day, Maya sat in the corner booth of the cafe, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She saw Camden walk in, and she barely recognized him. He had lost weight. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. His expensive suit had been replaced with jeans and a plain shirt. He looked defeated. He spotted her and walked over, sliding into the booth across from her. Thanks for meeting me, he said quietly. Maya said nothing, just waited. Camden took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. Maya raised an eyebrow. Do you? Yes. He looked down at his hands. I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past few months. About Dad, about how we treated you, about everything. And you're right, we were cruel, we were selfish. We didn't deserve what Dad left us, and you didn't deserve what we said to you. Maya sipped her tea. What happened, Camden? Why are you really here? He laughed bitterly. You want the truth? I'm broke. Completely broke. The business failed. I had to declare bankruptcy. Sienna left me. She took the kids. I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment and working at a hardware store just to pay child support. Maya felt a flicker of sympathy, but she pushed it down. And Delaney? She's not much better. Lost her condo. Her husband left her too. Last I heard, she's living with a friend in Tampa and working as a receptionist. Camden looked up at her. We thought we had everything, Maya. We thought Dad had given us the world. But it was all smoke and mirrors. The house had a hidden mortgage. The cabin was falling apart. The portfolio was useless. The watches were fake. He paused. Dad set us up. He gave us just enough to make us think we were rich, and then it all fell apart. And you know what the worst part is? Maya didn't respond. The worst part is realizing that he was right. We didn't deserve anything. We abandoned him. We were selfish and greedy and terrible. And you were the one who actually loved him. You were the one who sacrificed everything. And we mocked you for it. Camden's voice broke. I'm so sorry, Maya. I know it doesn't change anything. I know you probably hate me. But I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that I understand now. Maya sat in silence for a long moment. She thought about her father, about his letter, about the life she had built. And then she spoke. I don't hate you, Camden. I did for a while. But I don't anymore. Camden looked up, surprised. Really, really, because hating you was exhausting. And it wasn't making me happy, so I let it go. Camden's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve your forgiveness, maybe not. But I'm giving it to you anyway, not for you, for me, because I want to move on. Camden nodded, wiping at his eyes. Thank you. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Camden asked, Can I ask you something? Sure. How are you doing this? Living here in this beautiful town, looking so happy and at peace. I thought Dad left you nothing. How did you afford all this? Maya smiled. It was a small, knowing smile. Dad didn't leave me nothing, Camden. He left me everything. Camden frowned. What do you mean? She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. It was the letter from her father. Camden's face went pale as he read. He looked up at her, his mouth open. $4 million? She nodded. He set up a trust. Years ago, everything we thought he had, that was just the scraps. The real estate, the real money, he gave it all to me. Camden stared at her. And you didn't tell us, why would I? You made it very clear what you thought of me. Maya's voice was calm but firm. You laughed at me. You called me a failure. You tried to kick me out of my own home. Why would I tell you anything? Camden's face crumbled. He put his head in his hands. Oh my God. We were so stupid. Yes, Maya said simply. You were. They sat in silence. Then Camden looked up at her, his expression raw. Are you going to help us? Delaney and me. Are you going to bail us out? Maya met his gaze. No. Camden nodded slowly. I understand. But, Maya continued, if you ever want to have a relationship with me, a real relationship, not one based on money or obligation, then I'm open to that. Someday, when you figured out who you are without the greed and the entitlement. Camden's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you, Maya. I don't deserve that either. Probably not, but Dad taught me that love isn't about what people deserve. It's about what you choose to give. Camden stood up, his movements slow and heavy. I'll go, but Maya, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You turned out better than any of us. He left. Maya watched him walk out of the cafe and disappear down the street. She felt lighter, freer. She had spoken her truth, set her boundaries, and let go of the anger that had been weighing her down. That evening, she stood on her deck, watching the sun set over the ocean. She thought about her father, about his love, about the life he had given her, and she whispered into the wind, Thank you, Dad, for everything. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new live stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next live story with love and respect.